So you've probably heard that countries have been added to BRICS. Now the BRICS countries are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Quite a powerful little force, but countries have been added to that list, or at least will be added in January 2024.
We have decided to invite the Argentine Republic, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to become full members of BRICS. The membership will take effect from the 1st of January 2024.
But I want to talk about the countries that have been added, why it's significant, and the impact on the general world, and maybe some little thoughts about the currency that BRICS will use together, and will they use XRP? My honest thoughts, all of that will be in this video. So as it stands right now, the population of BRICS, the way BRICS is right now, is 3.21 billion people. That is, believe it or not, about 40% of the world population. And so just by looking at land mass, it's quite, if you look at it from like a war perspective, which I would imagine that America is looking at it like that, you kind of see the spread of this BRICS coalition type thing, with Russia and China at the helm of all of that. And now the idea that they've actually increased their capacity, they've increased their land mass, they've increased their population, and increased the GDP that's represented within BRICS, that is all very scary for America, who wants to hold on very tightly to their baby, that is the US dollar, which, if you remember, the US dollar is simply, doesn't even mean anything. It's purely printed out of thin air and only made powerful by America because America said it was powerful. It's wild how that works. So I'm going to list off the countries that we've now got entering BRICS in January 2024. The first one is Argentina. Argentina have a population of about 45 million people. Egypt, who have a population of around 104 million people. Ethiopia, who have 120 million people. Iran, who have 85 million people. Saudi Arabia, who only have 35 million people, but potentially hold the key to all of this as one of the most influential players in this new edition. And then the UAE, that only has 9.8 million people as its population, but again, massively influential area. So let's do some numbers about GDP. So we'll look at the GDP of BRICS in general, then we'll look at the GDP of these new additional countries, and then what that means for, GDP comparisons against the other countries around the world and this new BRICS coalition. And it'll all make sense at the end when we get into the kind of the thought piece, the opinion piece at the end. Before I go into GDP, I actually want to talk about the increase in the amount of people that BRICS will see when they add these new countries. So like I said, they currently have about 40% of the world population within BRICS right now. When you add those other countries, that turns into 45% of the world's population. You're almost at the point where you're at half the world population being in the BRICS coalition. How do you think the USA feels about that? BRICS joining as a united front. It's a very interesting thing that's playing out here, and it is the start, in my opinion, of the actioned de-dollarization. We've heard that it's de-dollarizing because they're just buying all of the gold. Why are they buying all the gold? Well, it's probably because they want to separate from the US dollar and they want to back something else by gold. Yeah, and there was I think it was Kenya the other month or something, talking about how they're not going to pay in dollars anymore. They have to do their trade in another currency. And there was hints of all of this, but this is now actionable, like where we are accumulating gold for a currency that we've announced. We're going to add countries to BRICS and make them BRICS Plus in January 2024, which is almost half of the population now of the world. This is a clear move by BRICS to de-dollarize, and it's really powerful. It's going to cause, pardon the pun, a massive ripple effect. So the population of BRICS will be increasing by 12.4%. That's a massive growth in the reach of an entity, 12%. So when you add up the GDP of all of the countries that are in BRICS and going to be in BRICS in January 2024, it makes up 30% of the global economy. Yes, about 45% of the global population, but 30% of the global economy. But $31 trillion is no joke on the world stage. It's not like a huge amount of money because it's only 30% of the global economy, but you can't ignore basically a third of the world's economy and just dismiss it. So the USA have to acknowledge this, and it's just so interesting. And all the GDP stuff was broken down in a tweet. I'll just put it over there. And like I said in my tweet, in response to that, holy moly, it's like there's lots of money running through this whole system. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to read this all off here because it really puts it into perspective who's the big player in this whole situation. So you've got Argentina with just over $500 billion, Egypt with just under $500 billion, you've got Ethiopia with 150 billion, Iran 367 billion, and then out of nowhere, but not really because we already knew this, Saudi Arabia have a $1 trillion GDP. Saudi Arabia, even though it's going to be in BRICS Plus, has a higher GDP than South Africa, who's in the main BRICS group. What does this mean for the powers, who the leadership? Does Saudi Arabia now move into a spot that has equivalent or more power or more say than South Africa? And then you've got the UAE, which is no surprise, $500 billion. So what do I think is going on here? Well, I think the main thing to consider here is that the petrodollar is done, right? De-dollarization is taking effect. These countries are not small countries and they're joining, and this is just the first list of countries that will join. This isn't the end of the list. This is just the list joining in January 2024. What about the start of 2025? Like, there's more countries being added to this. And I saw somewhere that the list of countries that want to join BRICS is up there at like 40 countries long. When you add those 40 other countries that want to join BRICS, you don't just have a third of the economy anymore. You've got half, 60%, 70% of the economy now within that realm. And at that point, the moment the global economy breaches over from a 50% to 51%, whoever holds the 51% of the global economy is now the who runs the show. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that just seems to make sense. And I just don't think it's going to take that much. It's not going to be that hard for BRICS to take over. Now, the big question that everyone's got in their mind is, well, are Ripple working with BRICS? And I just want to separate some things in my mind, and I'll speak about them here. So you've got all of these different countries in BRICS and who will join BRICS in 2024, in some capacity, have basically talked with Ripple. And it even goes as far as some documentation talking about CBDCs, the retail or wholesale CBDCs for these BRICS countries. You know, they've had discussions with Ripple. You can't change that. So what's the difference between the conversations with Ripple and this BRICS currency that is yet to be announced? So I think there's two different outcomes here. I think the first outcome, which would be the craziest for news and it would just everyone would go into mass hysteria, that's where this BRICS token is built on the XRP ledger. It's backed by gold within the XRP ledger, and it's different to their BRICS Pay that they have right now. Because the BRICS Pay that they have right now works on a blockchain. I just think that's their own blockchain and doesn't use Ripple or XRP, right? They would have to make a switch to this new currency, to a new blockchain, and kind of cause that upheaval once again. Now, I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to cause that upheaval again to switch to another system, and it's only been around since 2017. So what is that? My maths is terrible, but 6-7 years. Why would you switch the system again in 6 years? Just doesn't make sense. So what makes more sense to me is that they will continue to use the BRICS Pay that they have. They'll bring more people into BRICS Pay, these new countries that are added. They'll bring them into BRICS Pay to allow them to be interoperable with the BRICS Pay ledger. So it's all on one book, it's all instant payments, it's super easy. It facilitates the trade in all of those locations. That can be okay for us, right? I wouldn't get scared. I'm not worried about that. It's actually quite exciting. And I'm thinking primarily about XRP as my biggest holding and probably your biggest holding as well. But just because these countries can facilitate instant payments on their own blockchain and are likely to do so doesn't mean they don't need XRP. And I'd actually say there's probably more of a reason why they need XRP now in this new system with their new currency and their own blockchain. And it's because in order to engage with these other countries outside of the BRICS countries, you're going to need an agnostic bridge asset. The agnostic part is really, really important because it's not affiliated with any country. BRICS typically will want to work within themselves. And depending on the country, within BRICS, you know, there's different leniencies towards the West. Like Russia has a lower tolerance for the West. China maybe has a lower tolerance for the West. But South Africa maybe has a bit more, right? Because, you know, it's a British kind of colony. So maybe there's more, maybe it's more relaxed on that front. How I see it working ultimately is, I think every country within BRICS is going to have their own CBDC. It's going to operate on a blockchain. These individual CBDCs will go through a software or a program that is interoperable or allows their CBDCs to be interoperable. I think that's going to be R3. It makes complete sense for it to be R3. They're covering the bases basically across the board anyway. They use R3 connecting to any other CBDC outside of the BRICS nations. And it's my opinion based on what I've heard in the background. You won't see this online. Everyone will talk about the native asset for R3 being XDC. I'm telling you, I know XDC will be used, but they're going to use XRP. I know this, okay? And there's an element of like, you got to trust me on that, or just remain skeptical and look for yourself. That's completely fine. I'm just telling you, this is my channel. I can say what I think, and I think they're going to use XRP. So you've still got that natural flow of all of the CBDCs from all of the BRICS countries flowing into that agnostic bridge asset via R3 into the asset that they want to settle in or convert into, allowing all the BRICS nations to work with all the countries outside of BRICS, but also allowing them to use their own blockchain with their basically one CBDC, their regional CBDC, to interact with each other. Just remember, these countries do need to trade outside of BRICS as well. So there needs to be payments made from inside BRICS to outside BRICS, and that can come in two different capacities. That could be from, you know, bundling up BRICS, the BRICS token together, bundling all those transactions up and sending those off to another country. Obviously, you need an agnostic bridge asset in the middle, or the individual countries' CBDCs, which maybe on the back end will be different to the BRICS coin, and they can use those CBDCs via R3 using XRP to send money across the world. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. The value still needs to move around the world. It's just the way it's done, and I think it's all just kind of semantics. It's all technology and interoperability, and it's not stuff typically we have to worry about. We are just too smart for our own good, and we know about all this stuff. So that's why it gets frustrating, like seeing all these moves, because all we see in the public forum is what they want the public forum to see. What we're doing in the background as people in the public, but with abnormal intelligence, we're seeing all the moving parts underneath, and we're making speculations that I don't think they realize we are able to make. And I just find that very interesting. So let me just sit down. I've got a big video coming out tonight. It's only 20 seconds long. I'm going to ask you to watch it. There's going to be a video every single day for the next 5 days. I want you to make sure you watch it. I'm not going to tell you what it's about, but I know many of you are going to be very excited. Stay emotionless, and I'll see you in the next one.